How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Bob Outdoors. Today we're going to be doing a pan fishing 101 video. It's going to be teaching everything you know about the rods, the reels you need, the type of line, and even the lures too. So today we're going to be testing out, but first we're going to be doing the weekly shout-outs. Okay, there's a new comment this week. It's going to be Nicholas JOF. Let's show his comment right here. You can see this is his comment right here. It's pretty cool. My green screen shirt right here. It's actually an orange shirt, but here you go. You can see his comment right here. If you guys ever want to win the weekly shout out, I'll be shouting out any channel you want. Just say something nice down in the comments and I'll shout you out in my next video. Alright guys, so let's get into the video. Wait a minute, let's shut this thing off. There you go. I'm going to show you the basics in pan fishing. You want to get started in fishing? Pan fishing is the best way to start fishing. And what you need to start out when you start out fishing, you just need to get your rod. There's an Easy Cast sturdy stick. There's a very old rod, but I recommend if you ever go to Walmart, you get about a combo with a tackle box on the end of your rod with tackle in it, and with a rod and reel combo. It should go with all that at Walmart for about, I don't know, 15 bucks. Maybe you get a $10 rod and reel combo. But I'm going to be showing you what you should get is for beginners, you always should use a spinning rod or a button press rod. Spinning rod, I'll show you that in a minute. But this is a button press. What you do is, let me drop this thing on here. Whenever you push the button, it drops your slack and drops your line. Then you just push the reel and reel back in. So it's very easy, and I usually use it to cover more water, just to reset cast and reel in, cast and reel in. It works really good. Reminds you a bit of a bait caster, but those are more of a challenging rod, not for beginners. But so that is my rod of choice, is either a spinning rod or a button press rod right here. So also I'll show you a spinning rod. But let's switch this to the spinning rod. Okay, here we go. I got my spinning rod right here. So this is a Shakespeare Firebird. It's a really good rod. I really recommend if you go pan fishing, or as I say, for like crappie, bluegill, sunfish, any of those type of fish, you should always get either a medium light or an ultralight rod. Ultralight rods, in my opinion, are the best for pan fishing. Here I just got a medium rod. I just want to show you the difference between a spinning reel versus a button press. There's a spinning reel right there. You reel in, you flip the bail, and then you flip the bail and you hold this to the edge right like this. Flip the bail, and then when you let go, then swing it and let go. It might take a while to practice, but still you should be able to get it right. It shouldn't be too hard to get it right. So now on to the tackle you need to use. Okay guys, back to this rod right here. So what I usually use for pan fishing is I usually use just a simple old bobber right here and a small jig. Pan fishing, you should always use jigs because they work the best. They just look like a small bug or some sort of food that fell into the water, or usually it will look like a smaller bait fish when you jig it. But when you have them on a bobber, this is suspended jigging is what it's called when you have a bobber and a jig at the end. There's also dead sticking, is when you have a bobber, a hook with like a worm on it and you don't touch it at all. That's really good for beginners. You just don't even move it. You just cast out there with a bobber and some like food on it or a worm on it. The thing about dead sticking in fishing, it's actually not that great because when you keep it there, you're not usually reeling in, and the fish usually gets gut hooked or swallows the hook, and it's harder to get out of the fish's mouth. It usually swallows the hook way back there. You have to cut the line or kill the fish. So in my opinion, dead sticking is pretty good, but suspended jigging is way better. They also have normal jigging. You just have no bobber and just this. So what you do is you just want to cast it out. It won't cast as far because the bobber has some weight onto it. And this small thing with a tiny jig head isn't going to go very far. But you just cast it out without a bobber. That's called jigging. You cast it out and you just sort of twitch your rod a little bit to make it mimic like a bait fish, and just go up a little bit like this, bob up and down. That is the types of fishing for panfish. You can fish many different types of fish with jigging, but with different types of jigs. So now on to different types of bait. Okay guys, so you could usually use this jig that I showed you. It's just a normal jig head. You get these in a pack with a pink grub tail that hooks right in the jig. You get these for really cheap. I got a whole pack of these for about 99 cents, and the jig, you get a couple of jigs for pretty cheap. I got a whole kit actually that went with these things, jigs, and you should look at Walmart. They should sell them. It's a panfish kit that gives you jigs, hooks, maybe even leader too, bobbers, and all sorts of stuff for pretty cheap, like under 10 bucks. You get a panfish kit, so you'll be ready to fish. Okay guys, now next step to catching panfish is usually locating them. Panfish all have different feeding habits, but most of them aren't that different. So first with crappie, usually I am more of a crappie fisherman myself, because where I fish is next to a dam. There's a lot of crappie there because the crappie flow past the dam and then go into like a small pond I fish, and then it goes into a river. I fished a small pond that the dam goes down to. But usually crappie are usually in schools, and it depends on what time of year, what time of day. They usually feed at sunrise is usually the best time to get crappie, at a nice warmer day. And in my time fishing, it's usually better to do a nice sunny warm day, and usually the crappie are schooling above the water, not all the way down to the bottom. They're usually schooling about a couple feet from the surface. So then they eat things that fall from the sky, maybe a worm or a bug or a fly or some sort of grass or something that fell from a tree, and they usually feed from the surface. So I usually take one of these. If you're really close, this doesn't work for everybody, but just take one of these, hook it on a normal small Aberdeen hook. Instead of one with a jig, have one just a normal hook, a weightless jig. Most people don't use that, but I use that pretty often because the crappie school like about 2-3 feet away from me. So I just have one with no weight, a weightless jigging. So what I do is it looks like one of these, but without a jig head, and it just floats to the top, and then the crappie bite it right out of the top, like basically top water fishing for crappie. They float right on the top. When the crappie bites, it sinks down slightly to where they are. Usually when they bite it, they pull it down. If they don't get it, it floats right back where they were. So that's really good, but it doesn't cast very far. So you have to be only cast like 2-3 feet. So if they're crappie schooling right next to the bank, then you should be really good. Okay guys, now on to drag and drag systems. If you're new to fishing, and if you don't know, these button press ones have drag. And you're like, what does that do anyway? But well, I'll tell you right now, drag is good for if you have a smaller pound test. Test basically line, monofilament, I would use fluorocarbon or monofilament line when you're fishing crappie, because it's invisible. You just use a really small pound test line, like 4-pound line, maybe 6-pound line. I even go down to 2-pound line sometime, but for beginners I'll go around 4 to 6-pound line. So this is about 6-pound line right here, and it's pretty, you could see it, but it's more invisible than most thicker line, like 12-pound line usually used for catching bass and used for crankbaits. But also, you should always use smaller line or fluorocarbon because it's more invisible in the water. And the thinner the line, the easier to cast in these smaller rods that are made for certain pound test. So what you want to do is to re-spool these lines with a button press. What you want to do is you want to just unscrew the top like this, like so. And then right here they have a gap. You should be able to see that. A gap right there. And you should be able to tie a knot around it, and then just hold. This is what you need to do. Have your line, when it's empty, get out your old line or whatever you want. Hold the line up to the handle like this. Tie your line with a knot inside this gap. Don't make sure it doesn't go anywhere else, just right inside that little gap right there. Put the string in there, tie it around, and then just reel in. You can have your spool of the line hooked onto either, I usually have it onto like a bolt, like a big bolt, or they have special, some of them have rod rods that hook onto your second rod that you'll be able to spool your other fishing pole with. But after you get there, usually whenever you buy a fishing rod, it usually goes with line. But if it doesn't, that's a good way to re-spool your line. I might do another video of how to re-spool it, like showing you. None of my fish poles need to be re-spooled anyway, but you usually go with line. But after a while, you like cut the line. You cut the line. They break off. They fray. The lighter the line, you need to learn how to use drag. If you have a really thick line, maybe the fish will look at it and know it's like, oh, this is not something that's hooked by a big string connect to it. Basically, the thinner the line, the more invisible it is. That's why some people use like a leader. They have like, I don't know, 10-pound, 12-pound line, and they connect it to a 4-pound line, so you can't really see it as much down here. About, I don't know, a foot of 4-pound line, and then connect it to 10-pound line on top. So that's why you need to know how to use drag. Because if you don't know how to use drag, this could snap and you don't want to lose a fish. So how to use drag is by setting up according to what you're fishing. Especially crappie, you wanna. They fight a lot and they thrash around crappie, mostly like most panfish do, but they're not as strong as most fish like bass or carp. So what you want to do is you want to set the line. You don't want it too loose to drag, or you don't want it too tight to drag. So what you want to do is just come down here and pull it. You reel it in, reel in your slack, just pull it and see how loose it is. You want it not too loose, because if it's too loose, then your fish will just keep going. You won't be able to reel it in, and it'll just keep going to drag it. If it's too tight, it might snap your line. So what you want to do is just hold it by this side and just pull it. If you feel like that's good enough to drag, then you should be fine with fishing it. But what I usually do is when I catch a fish, if the drag is too loose, I tighten it a little bit. If the drag's too tight and you don't hear, if you're reeling in a fish and you don't hear this, well then you should loosen the drag just a little bit, just so you hear a little bit like this. Like not too much. If it's like this, then you need to tighten it. So you'll figure out. You just gotta fine tune it. It depends on what fish you're catching in, but for a panfish you don't need it that tight or that loose. You gotta find the perfect fine tune. You usually will find that while you're catching a fish. So okay guys, hopefully you liked that video, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I might make more of these videos. If we get 3 likes, I'll do a crappie catch and cook, because it's gonna be pretty warm in the past couple days, and I'm gonna be hopefully catch some crappie, and it's gonna be spring sometime soon, so I'll be catching a lot of crappie. Maybe do a catch and cook. They taste really good. So if you want to see that, guys, go down below, comment do you want a crappie catch and cook, or if you want anything else, any other catch and cook, any video you suggest me to do, or any tip you have of me for crappie fishing. I'm not the best crappie fisherman. I'm pretty new to crappie fishing, so if you have any tips, please comment below. I'll really appreciate it. And also, give this video a like, and I'll do a crappie catch and cook. See you guys next week. Bye.